The rescue Olivia Bennett smoothed the fabric of her emerald dress, a consignment shop find that she'd spent half a day altering to fit properly. Around her, New York's elite glided across the Winter Arts Foundation gala in designer gowns that probably cost more than her annual salary. The grand ballroom of the Thorne building glittered with crystal chandeliers reflecting off jewels and champagne flutes, creating a dazzling atmosphere of wealth and influence. Just 2 hours, she whispered to herself. Find the right donors, make your pitch, save the center. The Westside Community Arts Center wasn't just Olivia's workplace. It was her mission. For 3 years, she'd built programs providing creative outlets for neighborhood kids who had few other opportunities. Now, with their building's lease tripling and grant funding slashed, they faced closure in 3 months unless she found new financial support. She scanned the room, mentally reviewing the names and faces she'd memorized from the foundation's donor list. These people had the means to save everything she'd built with a single check. If only she could make them care about arts education in a neighborhood most of them had never visited. Olivia? Olivia Bennett? She turned to find Michael Preston approaching, champagne in hand and surprise evident on his handsome face. They'd worked together at Meridian Marketing 3 years ago, before Olivia left the corporate world to pursue her passion for arts education, a move Michael had called career suicide at her going-away party. Michael. I didn't expect to see you here. She maintained a polite smile while inwardly groaning at the interruption. I could say the same, he replied, eyes scanning her dress with subtle assessment. These tickets cost a small fortune, certainly more than a community arts program budget would allow. The foundation provided complimentary tickets to selected nonprofit representatives, she explained, omitting that she'd written 7 application letters before receiving one. How charitable of them. His smile didn't reach his eyes. So the little art project is still going? I assumed you'd have returned to the real world by now. Before Olivia could respond, a woman in a designer dress appeared at Michael's side, her arm possessively looping through his. Darling, the Whitneys are looking for you. Vanessa, meet Olivia Bennett. We worked together at Meridian before she left to teach finger painting in the projects. Olivia's cheeks burned at the deliberate mischaracterization of her work. Actually, we offer comprehensive visual arts, music, and dance programs serving over 200 students weekly. How quaint, Vanessa said with practiced politeness. Though I imagine the fundraising must be challenging. Actually, that's why I'm here, Olivia replied, determined to maintain her dignity. Our programs have shown measurable improvements in academic performance and decreased involvement in high-risk behaviors. Michael's smile turned condescending. Always the idealist. Tell me, what's your backup plan when the center inevitably closes? I might be able to put in a word at Meridian if you're ready to be sensible. The suggestion that her life's work was merely a phase to outgrow felt like a slap. Olivia glanced around, seeking any excuse to escape the conversation without burning a potential connection. Michael might be insufferable, but he knew people with money. That's when she saw him. Standing alone near a pillar was a tall man in an impeccably tailored tuxedo. Unlike most guests who clustered in conversational groups, he seemed content in solitude, observing the room with quiet interest. Something about his stance, confident yet unassuming, drew her attention immediately. Without allowing herself to reconsider, Olivia smiled brightly at Michael. If you'll excuse me, I see someone I need to speak with. She moved purposefully across the room, heart pounding as she approached the stranger. Up close, she could see he was remarkably handsome. Dark hair with a touch of silver at the temples, striking blue eyes and features that seemed carved with both strength and sensitivity. Before she lost her nerve, she gently touched his arm. There you are, she said, loud enough for Michael to overhear. I've been looking everywhere for you. The stranger turned, surprise momentarily crossing his face before understanding flickered in his eyes. Without hesitation, he smiled warmly as if they were indeed old friends. I got caught up admiring the architecture, he replied smoothly, his voice rich and resonant. Forgive me for keeping you waiting. Olivia felt a wave of relief at his immediate participation in her spontaneous charade. No apology necessary. She was acutely aware of Michael and Vanessa watching them, curiosity evident in their expressions. Would you care to dance? The stranger asked, offering his arm with natural grace. I'd love to, Olivia replied, placing her hand on his arm and allowing him to lead her toward the dance floor, where couples moved elegantly to the string quartet's waltz. As they reached the polished floor, he turned to face her, one hand taking hers while the other rested lightly at her waist. "I'm Dominic, by the way," he said with a hint of amusement in his eyes. "Olivia Bennett," she replied, grateful and embarrassed in equal measure. "I'm so sorry for ambushing you like that." "No apology needed," Dominic assured her as they began moving to the music. "I recognized a tactical retreat when I saw one." "Former colleague? Is it that obvious?" She laughed softly, surprised by how naturally they fell into rhythm together. "Let's just say I recognized his type," Dominic replied, guiding her through a gentle turn, the kind who builds himself up by diminishing others. Olivia was struck by his perception. "We worked together before I changed careers. He thinks I wasted my potential by leaving corporate marketing." "And what do you think?" Dominic asked, genuine interest in his expression. The question caught her off guard. Most people at these events asked what she did, not how she felt about her choices. "I think finding your purpose is never a waste," she answered honestly. "Though some days when I'm writing grant applications until midnight or fixing leaky pipes because we can't afford a plumber, I do question my sanity." Dominic's laugh was warm and genuine. Purpose rarely follows the path of least resistance. As they continued dancing, Olivia found herself relaxing into both the movement and conversation. Dominic danced as he seemed to do everything else with quiet confidence and attentiveness. His hand on her waist was respectful yet warm, guiding rather than directing her movements. "So what brings you to this particular gathering of the wealthy and influential?" he asked. "Besides escaping uncomfortable reunions." "I'm here hoping to find donors for the Westside Community Arts Center," Olivia explained. "We provide arts education programs for kids in a neighborhood where creative opportunities are scarce. Our lease is tripling, and without new funding, we'll have to close in 3 months." "That would be a significant loss," Dominic said, his expression thoughtful. "What kind of programs do you offer?" Unlike the polite but distant interest she usually encountered, Dominic asked specific, thoughtful questions about her work, the students' ages, which programs had the highest participation, what outcomes they measured. His genuine interest made it easy to share her passion for creating opportunities for kids who might otherwise never discover their artistic talents. "Sorry," she said finally, realizing she'd been talking about the center for several minutes. "I don't usually monopolize conversations this way." "Don't apologize for passion," Dominic replied. "It's refreshing in a room where most conversations are carefully measured for strategic advantage." The music shifted to a slower tempo, and without discussion, they adjusted their steps accordingly. Olivia became increasingly aware of his hand at her waist, the subtle scent of his cologne, and the surprising comfort she felt in the arms of a complete stranger. "What about you?" she asked, suddenly curious about the man who had rescued her so smoothly. "What brings you here tonight?" A shadow of something, reserved perhaps, crossed his features. "Let's just say I have connections to the foundation." Before she could inquire further, a young man in a sleek suit approached them with apologetic deference. "Mr. Thorne, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the investors are waiting in the East Gallery." Dominic nodded, then turned back to Olivia. "Duty calls, unfortunately." "Will you be here for the remainder of the evening?" "Yes," she replied, wondering why her disappointment felt so disproportionate to their brief interaction. "Then I'll find you before the night ends," he promised, his eyes holding hers for a moment longer before he released her hand. "Save me another dance?" As Dominic followed his assistant from the ballroom, Olivia stood momentarily still on the dance floor, processing what had just happened. Only when she overheard 2 women nearby did the assistant's words register fully. Was that Dominic Thorne dancing with that woman in the green dress? Yes, surprising to see him actually participating. He usually makes brief appearances at these functions and then disappears to work. Well, he did design the building. Perhaps he's finally learning to enjoy his creations. Olivia felt her breath catch as understanding dawned. Dominic Thorne, the renowned architect whose innovative designs had transformed skylines across 3 continents. The billionaire philanthropist whose foundation funded arts initiatives worldwide. And she had grabbed his arm and dragged him onto the dance floor without having the slightest idea who he was. Hidden talents. 2 weeks after the gala, Olivia had almost convinced herself to forget about Dominic Thorne. Despite his promise to find her again that evening, he'd disappeared after his meeting, leaving her with nothing but an unexpected dance and the knowledge that she'd unknowingly pulled one of New York's wealthiest men onto the dance floor. At least it makes for a good story, she muttered as she balanced precariously on a stepladder, attempting to patch yet another leak in the Arts Center's aging ceiling. The sound of the front door opening echoed through the empty building. "We're closed," she called out, assuming it was a parent arriving early for pickup. Even for volunteer maintenance help? Olivia nearly fell off the ladder at the familiar voice. Dominic Thorne stood in the doorway, dressed in jeans and a simple gray Henley, a stark contrast to his tuxedo at the gala, but somehow equally suited to him. "What are you doing here?" she managed, climbing down carefully. "I found your center's address," he explained, approaching with an apologetic smile. "I wanted to apologize for disappearing at the gala. The investor meeting ran long, and by the time I returned to the ballroom, you were gone." Olivia noticed he carried a tool bag and wore work boots. "And the tools? You mentioned leaky pipes and maintenance issues." He shrugged as if billionaires regularly showed up to fix plumbing in struggling community centers. "I thought I might help." Over the next 3 hours, Dominic proved surprisingly skilled with practical repairs. He examined the building with a professional eye, identifying structural issues Olivia hadn't even noticed while fixing the immediate problems. "Where did you learn to do all this?" she asked as they worked side by side. "Construction jobs through high school and college," he replied, carefully securing a loose electrical fixture. "I worked my way through architecture school." Olivia studied him with new curiosity. The magazines portrayed Dominic Thorne as a brilliant, untouchable success story, not someone who knew how to replace a junction box or patch a ceiling. When a group of teenagers arrived for their evening art class, Dominic stepped back, content to observe as Olivia taught. One boy named Zach struggled with his architectural drawing, growing increasingly frustrated. "Mind if I offer some advice?" Dominic asked quietly, approaching the teenager. Olivia watched in amazement as Dominic sat beside Zach, offering guidance with the same attention he might give to a professional colleague. By the end of the session, the boy's frustration had transformed into focused determination. "You didn't tell him who you are," Olivia noted after the students left. "Would it have made a difference to the drawing?" Dominic asked. "No, but then it wasn't relevant," he said simply. "The skills matter, not who's sharing them." Over the following weeks, Dominic became a regular presence at the center, arriving evenings to help with repairs or occasionally mentoring students interested in design. Never once did he mention his wealth or status, and Olivia found herself increasingly drawn to this version of Dominic Thorne that the public never saw. One night, a sudden downpour trapped them at the center after hours. As thunder rumbled overhead, they found themselves alone in the partially renovated studio, the air between them charged with something more than the storm outside. "Why are you really here, Dominic?" Olivia finally asked. "Of all the causes in New York, why this one?" He considered her question carefully. "Because when I was 16, a community art program like this one saved me from a path that would have ended very differently. And because when I watched you talk about your work, I saw someone who understood that art isn't a luxury, it's essential." The simple honesty in his answer broke something open between them. When Dominic stepped closer, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face, the tension that had been building for weeks culminated in a kiss that felt like coming home to a place she hadn't known she was missing. Part 3. Unexpected. Complications. 6 weeks after Dominic's first appearance at the center, Olivia arrived to find a crowd gathered outside the building. A representative from Meridian Properties was addressing concerned neighbors about plans to demolish the entire block for luxury apartments. "The development has already received preliminary approval," the spokesman explained. "Meridian's parent company, Thorne Enterprises, has ensured all current tenants will receive relocation assistance." Olivia felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Thorne Enterprises, Dominic's company, was behind the development that would destroy her center. That evening, when Dominic arrived, Olivia confronted him immediately. "Were you ever going to tell me your company is demolishing our building?" The color drained from his face. "Olivia, it's not what you think. Meridian is a subsidiary company. I only learned about this development last week when the plans crossed my desk." "And you didn't think to mention it?" she demanded, hurt and betrayal overwhelming her. I've been working to find alternatives, he insisted. I wanted a solution before I brought it to you. Despite her anger, Olivia allowed Dominic to explain. Meridian had initiated the development months before he met her, with contracts and investor commitments already in place. Legally extracting Thorn Enterprises would be complex and potentially ruinous. I'm not asking you to sacrifice your business, Olivia said finally, but I can't lose this center either. These kids have nowhere else to go. In the tense weeks that followed, they maintained a fragile truce. Dominic introduced Olivia to his sister Elise, who suggested hosting a fundraising exhibition featuring work from the center's students. The event attracted unexpected media attention, drawing influential supporters to the cause. As the successful evening concluded, Michael Preston appeared, champagne in hand and malice in his smile. "Quite the publicity stunt, Thorn," he said loudly. "Supporting the very neighborhood your company is about to bulldoze." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Dominic. "Is this true?" asked one of the center's new supporters. "No, but then it wasn't relevant," he said simply. "The skills matter, not who's sharing them." Over the following weeks, Dominic became a regular presence at the center, arriving evenings to help with repairs or occasionally mentoring students interested in design. Never once did he mention his wealth or status, and Olivia found herself increasingly drawn to this version of Dominic Thorne that the public never saw. One night, a sudden downpour trapped them at the center after hours. As thunder rumbled overhead, they found themselves alone in the partially renovated studio, the air between them charged with something more than the storm outside. "Why are you really here, Dominic?" Olivia finally asked. "Of all the causes in New York, why this one?" He considered her question carefully. "Because when I was 16, a community art program like this one saved me from a path that would have ended very differently. And because when I watched you talk about your work, I saw someone who understood that art isn't a luxury, it's essential." The simple honesty in his answer broke something open between them. When Dominic stepped closer, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face, the tension that had been building for weeks culminated in a kiss that felt like coming home to a place she hadn't known she was missing. Part 3. Unexpected. Complications. 6 weeks after Dominic's first appearance at the center, Olivia arrived to find a crowd gathered outside the building. A representative from Meridian Properties was addressing concerned neighbors about plans to demolish the entire block for luxury apartments. The development has already received preliminary approval, the spokesman explained. Meridian's parent company, Thorn Enterprises, has ensured all current tenants will receive relocation assistance. Olivia felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Thorn Enterprises, Dominic's company, was behind the development that would destroy her center? That evening, when Dominic arrived, Olivia confronted him immediately. "Were you ever going to tell me your company is demolishing our building?" The color drained from his face. "Olivia, it's not what you think. Meridian is a subsidiary company. I only learned about this development last week when the plans crossed my desk." "And you didn't think to mention it?" she demanded, hurt and betrayal overwhelming her. "I've been working to find alternatives," he insisted. "I wanted a solution before I brought it to you." Despite her anger, Olivia allowed Dominic to explain. Meridian had initiated the development months before he met her, with contracts and investor commitments already in place. Legally extracting Thorn Enterprises would be complex and potentially ruinous. "I'm not asking you to sacrifice your business," Olivia said finally, "but I can't lose this center either. These kids have nowhere else to go." In the tense weeks that followed, they maintained a fragile truce. Dominic introduced Olivia to his sister Elise, who suggested hosting a fundraising exhibition featuring work from the center's students. The event attracted unexpected media attention, drawing influential supporters to the cause. As the successful evening concluded, Michael Preston appeared, champagne in hand and malice in his smile. "Quite the publicity stunt, Thorne," he said loudly. "Supporting the very neighborhood your company is about to bulldoze." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Dominic. "Is this true?" asked one of the center's new supporters. Before Dominic could respond, Olivia stepped forward. "Dominic, I think you should go." The pain in his eyes was unmistakable, but he nodded once and left without argument, leaving Olivia to salvage what remained of the evening and her heart. Rebuilding trust. 3 weeks passed without contact between Olivia and Dominic. The center's situation grew increasingly dire as Meridian Properties proceeded with their development plans. Determined to fight until the end, Olivia organized a community arts festival to demonstrate the center's vital role in the neighborhood. As she supervised preparations in the center's main room, an unexpected visitor arrived. Elise Thorne. "Before you ask me to leave, please hear me out," Dominic's sister requested. "There are things you should know about my brother." Over coffee, Elise shared stories of the Thorne siblings' childhood in a struggling neighborhood not unlike Westside, their mother's struggles with addiction, their time in foster care, and how a community arts program had given Dominic purpose when he was most vulnerable. "The buildings he designs always include community spaces because of that experience," Elise explained. "He's never forgotten where he came from, even if the business world requires him to present a different image." Later that week, 16-year-old Zach appeared in the reception area of Thorne Enterprises, refusing to leave until he could speak with Dominic. When security called upstairs, Dominic immediately came down. "Mr. Thorne, you have to help Ms. Bennett," the teenager insisted. "The center is the only place some of us belong." The day of the community festival arrived with unexpected success. Local media covered the event, showcasing student performances and artwork to enthusiastic crowds. As Olivia addressed attendees about the center's importance, a familiar figure appeared at the back of the crowd: Dominic, accompanied by city council representatives and several people she recognized from the Thorne Enterprises board. After her speech, Dominic approached the microphone with quiet confidence. "Today, Thorne Enterprises is announcing the withdrawal of the Meridian development proposal for this block," he stated, prompting gasps and applause. "Instead, we're establishing a permanent endowment for the Westside Community Arts Center and funding its expansion into the adjacent building." The crowd erupted in cheers, but Olivia remained still, emotions warring within her. When they finally found a moment alone, Dominic spoke first. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said quietly, "but I need you to know I never intended to hurt you or this community. Meeting you changed how I see my company's responsibility." "Why didn't you tell me the truth from the beginning?" Olivia asked, the question that had haunted her for weeks. "Because for once someone saw me, not my wealth or my name," he admitted. "With you I was just Dominic, and I wasn't ready to lose that." Olivia studied the man before her, the billionaire architect who had spent evenings fixing leaky pipes and mentoring teenagers, who had risked business relationships to save her center, and who looked at her now with honest vulnerability. "I don't know if I can trust again so easily," she said finally, "but I think I'd like to try." New composition. 6 months later, the expanded Westside Community Arts Center hosted its anniversary celebration in newly renovated spaces. The event showcased student achievements across various arts disciplines, including an architectural design exhibition mentored by professionals from Thorne Enterprises. Dominic attended without fanfare, observing with quiet pride how the center had flourished. Under Olivia's leadership, programs had expanded to serve twice as many students, with secure funding ensuring its future for years to come. After the formal ceremony, Olivia found Dominic on the center's new rooftop garden, a space he had designed but that had been brought to life by student artwork and community plantings. "This turned out even better than I imagined," he said as she joined him near the railing. "That's what happens when you let others contribute to your vision," Olivia replied with a smile. "It becomes something richer than any one person could create alone." The months since their reconciliation had been a careful dance of rebuilding, trust, professional collaboration gradually evolving into friendship and then something deeper. Dominic had established a foundation, supporting arts education nationwide while restructuring his company's development approach to prioritize community enrichment alongside profit. "I have something for you," he said, retrieving a small box from his pocket. Inside was a delicate silver pendant shaped like two dancers in motion. "It's beautiful," Olivia whispered as he fastened it around her neck. "I had it made from the original sketch of the couple in Zach's mural," Dominic explained. "The one he said represented two people from different worlds finding the same rhythm." Olivia touched the pendant, remembering the teenager's insightful description of the dance she and Dominic had begun that first night at the gala. "I've been thinking about rhythm," Dominic continued, taking her hand. How finding the right partner means moving together even when the steps are unfamiliar. Are you asking me to dance, Mr. Thorne? Olivia teased gently. I'm asking for more than that, he replied, his eyes serious. I'm asking if you might consider a more permanent partnership. Under the stars, surrounded by the thriving community they had saved together, Olivia's answer was both an ending and a beginning. Their kiss sealed a promise that had started with an impulsive rescue and evolved into something neither had expected, a love that transformed not just their lives, but countless others. 1 year later, they returned to the Winter Arts Foundation Gala as co-chairs of a new initiative combining urban development with community arts programs. As they stepped onto the dance floor where they had first met, Dominic held Olivia close. Did you ever imagine that night would lead us here? She asked, her head resting against his shoulder. No, he admitted, smiling down at her. But some rhythms are unexpected that way. Around them, benefactors pledged support for programs modeled after Westside, extending their impact far beyond what either could have accomplished alone. Their unexpected first dance had become a lasting composition that continued to evolve, creating new possibilities with every step.